Hello and welcome to the Time Trek podcast. My name is Antonio Panela, and today I'm joined with my co-host and good friend Mohammed Abubakr. Today we're going to be discussing a little bit about startups and our experiences throughout our life, the ups and downs. Yeah, so let's get it started. Abu, what's a good way to start this? Where do you want to start?
So excited for this topic because me being a startup founder myself, there's been a 10 years journey of ups and downs. Yeah, I love to share some of the learnings that I have had throughout the last decade. Some of the places where I made mistakes, some of the places where I was able to recover myself. Yeah, so looking forward to this topic.
Amazing. Yeah. It seems like, as time goes, we obviously learn more things and particular ways that we approach problems change.
Yeah.
Hopefully for the better. Sometimes we probably could go back and say, hey, it's so situational. When you first start a company in this world, and it's like, most of the time you're worried about like, okay, I got to create the corporation, and then you got to get that bank account, and then get the good logo and the name, and it's like the most important thing is like really understanding where you're going to start. Maybe the product isn't perfect, but maybe you're going to start at some point and you're really going to dig in. So as opposed to worrying about all the website and the design, because the website doesn't sell, you should be able to sell without anything, right? You're just talking to people. And so a lot of the mistakes that at least from my perspective as well, like just, jumping in and worrying about all of the sideline stuff when the reality is like your customer feedback and understanding where you are and where you want to go is the most important part of it. What are some of the early journey mistakes that you made that you can look back and say, wow, I'm an idiot? Like, you look 10, 15 years back, hopefully every year you're looking back and saying, wow, I should have done this, this, and this, and you're improving year over year. That's what shows you. But what are some of the main things that you feel are, that you would look back and say, I should have approached it?
Well, there are a lot of things that I would if I go back and redo the journey that I've had, there are a lot of things I would do it differently. First and foremost is just making better decisions when it comes to the people that I want to start my companies with. That's I think is the most fundamental thing I would alter. And secondly, I would back myself more than I did when I so
Hindsight is 20/20, right? And like you can always look back and say, I should have, I could have, I would have. But like there's main components that we can talk about, right? The learning journey is one thing, and that's a journey that you have to kind of go through. And you're not going to know how to solve problems or approach something unless you do it and look back. That's one thing. Maybe you can make better decisions, but at the end of the day, the core essence of like some of the situations that go on when you start a business, like what we're saying, like finding good people. Like it's so important to like be around somebody who's going to bring out the best in you and question you and new approaches. So some of the things like a partner is everything, right? Because you're really kind of like diving into problems and looking at them differently and kind of coming up with solutions as you go. So that reliability and effort is there. And hopefully you find good people. Another thing is like what we were saying about before, like, worrying about like the logo and the color and the thing. Really, it's the customer and what in your first startup when you started. If you think that there could have been like more growth or something that you would have done differently that could have made your first company a success, what are some of the pros and cons of that sort of initial experience? So we can like dive into a particular scenario.
so recently I came across a podcast where the startup founder said that one thing startup founders should avoid in order to be super successful is drama, and
Mhm.
eliminate people that cause dramas around you. And I felt that is such an amazing advice, and I wish I knew that. I wish I could do that when I founded my company at the beginning. Because when I look back and I see so much of drama that happened about equity sharing, about raising investments, about strategy, I think one of the common mistakes that startup founders do is having set of co-founders, investors who are very, very rational when it comes to decision making. And once you have made the decision, then there should not be any drama around that decision, and you just move forward with all force. I think that's one very amazing piece of advice, and I would give that advice to myself when in this journey to avoid as much drama as possible and just focus on what you intend to achieve. The
Yeah.
second advice I would give is to think big and think exceptionally big and not be worried about the the thinking of the people around, because you as a startup founder, you're supposed to think big because you are the one who is leading, whereas the people around you are going to think small because they are not startup founders.
Hmm.
But if you
And
get
it's such a
bothered by what they are feeling or what they think about, then you're essentially damaging your own chances of doing something exceptionally big. So I think that's another thing. No matter what people say, no matter what how crazy people consider you to be, thinking exceptionally big is of highest importance for a startup.
I want to jump into this thing. So I feel like it's such a good point. So like, in life, and it's like, okay, so you go out and you believe in something, and most people, like, there's this thing that I keep coming across it, and it's not anything new, but if the world will tell you what you are if you don't go out and tell the world who you are, right? They'll just kind of box you in. And you will be seen like that and treated in that way. And in a sense, what you're saying, especially when you're around people, right? You have an idea, you want to go about something. People have limited perspective on it, but people's opinions weigh heavy on you. One, two, people think they know everything, but in reality, it's like if they're not accomplishing something where you want to be, why the hell are you taking advice from them? Second is like talking to people just generally about your idea. It's kind of a waste of time because most people are more of the trying to poke holes in things, which is not completely a bad thing because you have a good brainstorm with that, but they're mostly just trying to shoot you down rather than trying to build you up. And it's like you can't just rely on people in general to kind of validate you. You have to talk to your customer. You have to talk to the person
Yeah.
who's going to pay you money. That's the person you need to be talking to. So it's
So
like
when
associates.
it comes to thinking big, Antonio, what I've realized is the amount of difficulty and the amount of hardships that you're going to face for every startup idea is going to be as hard as possible. So
Hmm.
there's no point in thinking small when you know that is going to the path is going to be super difficult.
Yeah,
So
right. That's what's
if
going to keep you
for
alive. That's going to keep
for
you breathing.
achieving smaller thing, if the path is difficult, why not just aim for a
The
larger
stars,
thing?
right? 100%, right? And so in order for you to, because you gotta go through a lot of bullshit in order to make something successful. There's a lot of stuff. There's, like you're saying, there's a lot of hurdles, and if the prize doesn't seem big enough for all the stress, at least in your mind, then what's driving you really? And there has to be constant little growth moments, right? If you're just kind of stagnating, kind of waiting around to see what happens, it's such you got to go out and do. And the moment you stay frozen is the moment you just kind of dwell on problems and you go in reverse. It's like if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So like what's moving you forward? What's propelling you to get to the next challenge? Because it doesn't matter how much money you make or how much you're bringing in, you're always going to step into that next problem. The problem is waiting for you. So you have to continue. It's like, and they may get bigger with, the more clients, the more money, the more responsibility, the more you take on, the more you anticipate more growth, and perhaps there's a speed bump. And so now you got to kind of go back and think about things for a little and then reconsider your approach. So yeah, you're right. Thinking big is the key to this. And if you're not thinking big, then that you're probably not gonna make it through.
Yeah. Yeah, so there have been a lot of lessons throughout this journey. Having great people, I feel, is another challenge for startup founders. I think what distinguishes a successful startup founder versus somebody who's not going to be successful is the inability to build a solid team around.
Hmm.
And I kind of give this example of how the mafias around the world were able to successfully build teams around them. So, you take any mafia around the world, the consequences for their employees is life and death.
Uh,
Yet they are able to build teams, amazing teams around them. In a startup space where I see like people quitting the startup just because they are being offered another, few $100s more by another competitor or another company, that clearly shows that you have not built loyalty within the employees. And this is
right.
problem across all startups. The
Mm.
employees just quit for petty reasons, for a little bit of more income. So that means they're not sold to the vision and they're not sold to the idea of that startup.
Right.
I give that analogy with compare that with say mafia, how mafia gets built. Those even those employees have choice to go out of the system. They have the um, they they can leave it, but they don't have to take that much risk. But they when they build it, they try to build such strong loyal system. And there are consequences that when you break that loyalty, which unfortunately whatever reason we as startup founders impose those kind of conditions for loyalty. But there's a lot of lessons that one can learn from those how they were able to form teams. And in a way, especially at a very starting state in a startup, you expect certain level of loyalty, certain level of going above and beyond to accomplish certain things. And if the employees think that this is just 9 to 5 kind of a job where they just have to work for 8 hours, and if there's a problem that can't be solved in that particular day, they just come back next day. I don't think great startups can be built that way.
You know,
How do
loyalty. So, yeah, how do you feel loyalty? So here I'll jump in real quick and think about this. I mean, there's two very important points in this creating loyalty. The first one is from the top down. Is from the top down. Are you as an executive and as somebody who's leading the company, are you articulating the vision correctly? Do you see into the future? Do people follow that? Do people understand it? Does it make sense? Do you offer growth opportunities from within? Do people feel like they're being heard? Do they feel like they can grow with you? Do they see a future with you? Then from looking at from the bottom up, it's like, we're looking at the people, can they perform at a certain level? Do I want to even offer them the opportunity to continue? So it's kind of like a two-way street here that not only from the top down, you have to express and show and articulate and offer these growth opportunities, but from the bottom up, they have to be able to also meet the goals and show. So there's an art to this relationship.
So, a lot of times, this question gets asked that, hey, you as a startup founder, you have a lot of skin in the game because you have the highest equity, so you are putting in all that extra hours and extra effort. But what's in for an employee? Why should any young employee put in more effort to solve this?
Right. Right.
My fundamental point to them, and this is based on my own experiences. I like to believe that whether it's a founder, whether it's an employee, if they're passionate about solving a problem, if they're passionate about just going all in to solve something without caring about the consequences, without caring about the returns from that, I think that intent, that thought process translates into eventually even those employees becoming successful startup founders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the examples I give is that, look, we play various sports. You play, in India, we play a lot of cricket, there's soccer, even chess. Why is somebody just going all out to defend a goal? What's the returns? There are hardly
Mm,
any returns, right? But you want to
mm,
do it because on the field you
love
want
it.
to be the best, and there's fun in that. So
Hmm.
one has
Hmm.
to look at a startup like a playing field where
Hmm.
everyone has to just give their best. And sometimes
Hmm.
you throw at yourself and you can get injured, you can, whatever can happen, but you are giving your best without expecting any returns beyond that 2 hours of play. So
Right.
that is the thinking that if that thinking is created within the team, then hey, I mean, I understand, like, okay, this startup, when for 10 years if it becomes successful, the founder might make a lot of returns and all that, but that's a long term thing. But right now, on this day, this is the field that we have, this is the problem that we are solving. And everyone, if they go all in and solve that problem, there's that lot of satisfaction for that. It's like
Yes.
winning a game of chess, with a good competitor. You say you play a few very nice moves and outsmart them. There's that happiness. You don't there's nobody's giving you a trophy immediately. There's no upside returns to it, but you still feel super duper happy. That's what I want startup founders and the startup team to feel on an everyday basis. And if that's happening, then I think that startup would be on a path towards success.
Right. And another thing is that, love the idea of like is a team. Right? Let's say soccer, you're kicking the ball back and forth and you're passing it to the next player, and each person is doing their job in order to accomplish X task, right? The task is to put the ball in the goal in this case. And so everybody, if they're doing their job, if they're training correctly, if they're looking at things, if they're deep into the moment and they understand it, their chances of succeeding to make that goal and possibly win the game are increasing. And it shows a lot about somebody's character on the way they work and the way they're passionate about what it is that they do. And so if they're kind of flimsy, and you could tell. And sometimes you do. You need to go overboard. You need to put some extra time in. You need to get injured. You need to feel dumb. You need to rethink your position. You need to bring ideas. And there's something so important about somebody who's self-driven in that sense, right? You have people on the team, on teams that you have to kind of explain things 15 times and go over the details, and they're not very detail oriented, or they're too new, or, whatever the case may be. But then there's people that like will come with four different solutions, and their best theory on why this is the best solution and how to approach it. And it's a functional brainstorming, like something that would take hours and perspective sharing and conversation with some people would take 20-30 minutes with another person who's really dedicated and focused and has a broad understanding and broad vision on something, and that can bring it to the table. And when you feel that loyalty and you do see growth, those are the people that you want to keep on your team. Those are the people that at the end of the day are going to get the best. The ones that, ate shit, and I'm sorry for using the language, but ate shit with you and went through the hardship and went through the difficulty, and then there comes a brighter day. And who is the person that they're going to say, hey, you know what? I need this person on my team. Let's really, let's raise you. Let's, give them equity, or let's give them something. That, it becomes like a snowballing effect for everybody. Everybody wins. If people are all in and you're truly solving problems and things are being communicated and goals are being accomplished, and everybody's doing their job, things happen, and it's a beautiful art. So like putting that together, it's an art in itself, and it's not easy. And we talk about all these like personalities and all these, all these approaches, which, I mean, from the top, and there's so much going on. So much has to happen from the founder perspective. Being able to deal with the problems outside, being able to deal with the problems within the team, being able to understand and guide correctly, and the ship can sail. And are you with it? Are you moving correctly? So there's a lot of variables here. What other things that strike you that are super important, regarding entrepreneurship and stuff?
Also feel that a lot of things that startups do. So there is a phase within a startup which involves creativity, innovation, and then there's a phase within a startup which involves doing repetitive, boring tasks again and again and again, and ensure that execution is going right. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of startups, while they excel in doing innovation, because there's also this feeling of adrenaline. There's all those pituitary
Mm-hmm.
glands liberating happiness enzymes, where you kind of feel like excited that hey, we are innovating, we're cracking this. But then post that there is this phase of a super long phase of boring work where there is not much excitement, there's not much
Really?
there's nothing that you look forward to on a daily basis except doing the same repetitive task again and again. But that execution is very, very essential. I think in my journey, where I have where I feel if I have to redo the journey, would be that execution part, or at least identifying that, okay, this is my weakness, that, when things are boring, I'm not my 100%. How do I find people who are very, very good executionists, who can just do this mundane daily task again and again, and just, not get frustrated from that kind of stuff. And I see that there are certain, I see a lot of people with that kind of skill set. If you look at people in manufacturing sector, once the factory layout is done, the kind of project managers or the floor managers, their job is to just do the same set of tasks again and again. Follow a checklist, get the employees do that checklist, and follow the sequence of steps. So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's what factory managers and floor managers do. You need those kind of executionists within the startups as well. So identifying that at a very early stage and bringing those kind of people on board is also very, very critical.
Yeah. 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 Well, I think what we're getting to a lot, and we're sort of being repetitive about, is like finding people that are all, that's like finding people who are loyal, able to execute and able to move because there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of perspective, there's a lot of back and forth about what may or may not work, and it's all just chitter chat at the end of the day. Like you have to have the
For
brainstorm.
example,
You have to work.
if you take delivering, so say you're building a SaaS product and you are onboarding customers and you're offering the customer is onboarded on the product and you're offering customer support for that. You need a set of people who are executionists for that job. You need onboarding is the same repetitive process. How do you ensure the customers get onboarded without any friction and then continue to have high satisfaction in usage of the product.
Right.
And it is a very boring task. It is not an exciting task, but you need people who get excited about that every day in the morning, talk to the customers, get them onboarded, because for the customer, it's the first encounter with your product.
So what
Customer
are
is
some
not
things?
aware that you have been doing the same task since the morning, onboarding other customers, right?
Mhm.
So you have to have that cheer on the face and you have to keep onboarding. So that's one example, right? So there are such examples. Like other thing is social media marketing. You have to, no matter what, how bad your campaign has gone yesterday, you have to still wake up the next day and post a new thing on social media and try to go and comment on other people's posts, post uh, you know bring traction to your post. That's a repetitive task that you have to do. So there's a creative part, which is creating the post. Then there is a boring part, which is just executing it on a daily basis. So
Yeah, no, for sure,
there
for
are a lot
sure.
of those things that are very, very important for the success of the startup, which a lot of founders tend to ignore. I ignore that for a vast majority of time. Even now, I keep realizing that okay, this is a task where I'm not doing it effectively on a repetitive basis, and I might need somebody, a project manager or a operations person, to just do this task.
Right. And so what are some things like in nowadays? I mean, do you feel like, starting a startup in today's day and age from scratch, do you feel like that's is it different than it was 10 years ago? Like, do you think there's more accessibility, no need for larger teams, or what is that looking like comparatively? Do you think things have changed drastically? Or are they still kind of somewhat similar? Like, how's your feeling on
I think much has changed in last 10 years. We have become more aware that we can cut down the cost by just subscribing to a particular software rather than having people do that work.
that?
So there is that aspect. But what that has also done is it has limited the number of people around us. So many times, a lot of creative ideas could have come from someone else, right, within the team. But now, because you have procured all this subscription based softwares and eliminated the people around you, there's not many people that you end up talking on a daily basis. So how do you get those creative juices flowing?
The other thing is like the I lost my train of thought with this thing. It always comes back to me. But yeah, how do you get those creative juices flowing with team members? We were talking about another one of our podcasts. We talked about remote work versus in person. It seems like having a chat or just having a chat with somebody. I think the fun in the job, if you can make jokes and collaborate, then things can flow. Like if you are like whether you're in person or on a video chat with somebody who's effective, like a team member, and you get those creative juices flowing, that conversation can bring it about, and you can have fun with it and kind of conclude, and it flows. It's just finding good teammates. Yeah. What other?
So so there are a couple of learnings that I have had that I wish I knew from day one. So one of them is this theory by Kunal Shah, is a founder of a startup called Free Charge and is doing something else. I think it's a startup called Cred. So he gave a talk and he gave this very nice theory that what he called it as his Delta 4 experience. So whenever a startup provides a Delta 4 experience for any offering, it becomes an irreversible decision for customers. So the theory is that say you are offering and then your competitor is offering. So the customer experiences both the offerings and the experience that the customer gets, and the customer gets to rate it on a scale of 10. If the customer is rating your service versus your competitor service, the delta between the services say less than 4, then the customer can pick any one of the service. So
Mhm.
on a scale of 10, if the customer is say giving 8 to your service and 7 to the service of your competitor, although your service is 1 point higher than the competitor service, but the customer can end up choosing your competitor.
Right.
Whereas if the difference between the rating that the customer is giving to you versus your competitor, if this is a delta of 4, so say you get rating 9, whereas your customer your competitor is getting a rating of 4 or 5, then there's a delta of more than 4, then the customer is going to choose you no matter what.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
customer is going to come back to you no matter what, because that's a delta for experience.
Yeah.
And he gives the example of Uber, where the toughness, or sorry, the amount, the difficulty that people used to face in booking a cab earlier before Uber came into existence, and versus booking the cab over Uber. If you rate both the experiences, you would probably give like 2 or 3 for the previous experience, and 8 or 9 for the new experience with the Uber.
Easy,
So that's,
easy. And you can do it from your home, and you don't have to worry about going to the flags to the taxi down. It's a whole like there's multiple different
yeah,
pros to it.
that's more than delta 4. That's maybe delta
Yeah.
6, right? So
Yeah.
that means people are never going to go back to the old method of ordering the cab. They are going to always use the new method of ordering the cab through the apps. So, that is true for every service that you're offering, whether you're building a POS system, whether you're building an e-commerce system. But if your offering is delta 4 versus your competitors, people are never going to go back to the old system. They're going to use your new system. So
I think that
I knew that, because what happens is when you're building a product, you tend to look at, hey, you have, my competitor has this functionality, I also have this functionality, and these are my 2 or 3 unique selling points. Whereas the goal should be that how can I create a delta 4 experience for every functionality that I am building?
right.
And and I think that's the fundamental difference that I have had in my thinking in the recent times, is to push for that delta 4 experience, than just doing something that exists in other ones and I'm also doing it. So
Mm.
that's number one big lesson that I have had. The second lesson that I have is, I read this book called In the Box Thinking. And I used to always, I was not fascinated by this out of the box thinking. And, we generally, in the team meetings and all that, whenever people are stuck, we keep saying that, hey, we got to think out of the box. How do we solve it? But what this book, reframed my point of view, is that you don't solve problems through out of the box thinking, but you solve problems through in the box thinking. So what this author of the book says is that, imagine that you're stuck in Antarctica, or in Arctic someplace, and you have to survive. That what do? You first put down all the set of things that you have, and then you formulate your strategy based on the list of things that are available at your disposal. Every problem that you solve in a startup has to be done that way. What are the set of things that are there at your disposal? Can you solve the problem with those set of things? It could be your contacts, it could be your employee skill sets, it could be the assets that you have. But you put together that in the box, what is there in your box, you put together that, and you try to solve the problem through that. So that's another thing that I generally look at. Like, whenever we are stuck with problems, let's look at what skills we have, what contacts do we have, and can we solve this problem within this.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
A lot
putting
of
that
times,
kind of accelerated the speed at which I'm able to create things, which again, when I started the startup, I did not have that. So, you generally, in order to pursue out of the box thinking, you end up figuring out, you end up doing research, you end up doing, wasting a lot of time, to figure out a problem. But now, whenever there's a problem, I just focus on in the box. How can I get this resolved through the list of things that I already have?
I mean, it's super important. I think there's two layers to this, and I like that point. But what about what you say? So there's what tools do I have to solve this, and I want to solve this right now, and I want to iterate on it. So it's like you have to go and do it. That's a very important thing because you can get stuck in like kind of like storming and theory and perspective, but it's like the execution aspect of it is just as important, and how fast you can put it out there and how fast you can iterate, because you will have to iterate on all these things that we're talking about. So one thing is that brainstorm and how to approach it and the tools and the people and the perspective and the conversations. And the other one is like, let's just jump in and let's break stuff, right? Let's break
Yeah.
stuff. Let's break stuff. You should always be breaking stuff because that's where you're gonna you can now build up, right? You got to break though, and so that's it. I feel like you can't be afraid of that. People call it failure, in a sense, and many things that you do, people, failure taught me, but really you're just breaking stuff, and you weren't able to build it back up, or you did, and you did even better, and because you have that perspective, and you got a different approach, and that opens doors to perspective. So it's like the best thing is like action-based results, right? So you continue, you iterate, you put action through, you see that it doesn't work, you do it again, and you kind of keep going. If you were to choose like something, so here we are, 2025, and today we're gonna start from scratch. We're gonna start a business. What are some industries that you like? Of course, AI is the most popular, but at the end of the day, like we were talking about, like the human aspect is so much more real now. Now technology will become, more commoditized over time, and that's only going to continue to be more the case. So the human aspect of relationships is, where is something exciting for you that's not the obvious AI that's right in front of our face? What is the next layer of this?
To be honest with you, there are so many amazing ideas, and it's with time you kind of accumulate all these different ideas. So as I'm nearing 40, I have like a huge bucket list of ideas that I would like to execute. But the challenge is which one, because you only have limited time.
And I was thinking about, like, everybody talks about having mentors, and mentors are these like old men, with, like gray hair, that have like been through it and everything. Nobody ever thinks about, like, it's great to have a diversified team in the sense that, like, a young kid out there understands technology, understands phones, understands how to communicate, understands how to do things in a weird new way. And like the mentors that we should all, we should be open to the perspective of mentorship from all types of angles and ages. Right? It's no longer the man that's built a business from scratch that's 70 years old that, can tell you about what the world is changing so much that a 20-year-old can be your mentor, right? Because they understand how to use certain tools, how to get things across. So it's like, we're kind of like in this phase of like, bringing on people that, are much younger, perhaps, there's perspective all over, but the reality is, like, kids are solving technology problems in a very simple way, and they know about it, and it's easy for them, and they see what's next, and they can see through it, and they at least help you understand what's out there. Because there's a lot out there that you don't, that we're both close to 40 here, and we see the world in a certain way. Perhaps we can think innovatively, and we have the good reasoning skills and good experiences. But at the end of the day, the world is a different place as it was, when we were in our 20s, and the people who are approaching it in their 20s, playing with solutions, using the latest technology, see right through and what's next. And maybe sometimes we need to be educated about what's next. So it's like keeping that diversified group around you that's keeping your, everything open, being open to fun ideas and different things.
Yeah, I think mentors, what I found throughout the journey is you talk with a lot of people who are senior, who have had like more journey in their life compared to you. But at the same time, it is super important to, especially for startup founders, to understand what advice that they need to take and what advice they need to ignore. Because no startup founder is going to have the same journey as that of a mentor.
Never.
Circumstances could be different, the people that you are carrying would be different, your personal ambitions could be different, personal skill sets could be different, personal motivation could be different. So the mentor is going to share, assuming that if that mentor was present in your shoes, how would he respond? So those are the kind of advices that you get, but
Listen,
it's you
more.
in your shoes, it's not the mentor. So how your personality, uh, will shape the future is based on yourself, and you know yourself better than anyone else. So it's very.
With mentors, like, I feel like it's there's systems that can be shared that you can implement, but at the end of the day, what it really boils down to is swinging. Like, you have to, like, and you're swinging as it relates to baseball. Like, you have to be at the mound and you have to take your swings, and you're gonna miss, and you may hit a double, you may hit a home run, and you may strike out, but you have to be there swinging and trying, and that's what's gonna see. I'm such a believer in action. A lot of perspective and ideas and conversations are just there. Brainstorms are incredibly functional as well. Like a good person to have a good brainstorm with that can kind of point things out forward. You can arrive at things quickly and take a different approach. But then once you arrive at the theoretical perspective is like, okay, so now it's execution time. So you have to have this sort of like drive to go and do. And if you're not doing, then you're not learning. And if you're not learning, then you're just kind of sitting thinking about things. And it's just stagnation. It's like swinging. You got to swing all day until you find something that works. And then you go and like, once it works, it's like multiply and just put your life into it and like let the thing grow. But you got to swing to find out. It's like, I feel like we're at a point with Bloom, like we're here. I think we are, there is a delta 4 or 5 between our competitors at this point. Honestly, I feel that. Like I'm seeing it, and especially when we're doing demos, we're like, "Yeah, let's go." I mean, it's a no-brainer, and that excites me so much. It's like if we execute this correctly, we could become that company. And it took a lot because we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, and it's hard sometimes, and sometimes it's super exciting. I love to talk to customers. I love to get feedback. I love to take shots. I love to kind of like go and learn, and I think that it's super important. I mean, again, like working with you and our team and like, it's surrounding yourself with the right people and taking the chance because we will make it and we're going to do great. But it's just like, what is that path and how quickly can we get there? And sometimes maybe rushing it is hard too because you expect so much. But then, time will tell. And so as we see time flow, things happen. What are, I mean, I flood you with questions because that's just kind of who I am.
Yeah.
What,
So Antonio, let me ask you a few questions. So you had like a a, a very vast career. You spent time in Italy, you spent time in US, in Colombia. So and you have been associated with startups around all these regions. What kind of differences do you see, in each of these geographies?
This is such a cool question, and thank you for. I love a good question. So look, I was born in West Palm Beach. I lived there till I was 8 years old, and then I moved to Colombia when I was 8 years old, and to Bogota. And I moved, back to Miami when I was 12. A couple of different countries, like you said, Italy and a few different places. And somehow I've always had this entrepreneurial tick to me since I was a little kid. Like from selling, hockey and baseball cards in South America because and talking to people about how like important each one of the players were and teaching them and like for selling candy to like, and understanding the difference of approach in entrepreneurship. So let's talk about what, entrepreneurship looks like from my perspective of what I've gained and what it looks like in each country. What I see in Colombia, there's a very entrepreneurial like spirit because if you're not an entrepreneur, you're basically working at a very low wage, right? In the United States, you can get a good job and make a good amount of money. Like you can work in sales and make what a doctor makes, right? In Europe, there's a lot of bureaucracy. The culture is different. I don't know. I just did. We would do. I started a little company when I was like, I think I was like 22 years old. I was living in Rome, and me and my buddy, we started a little like a bar crawl sort of thing. I would go to these tourist buses that would come from different countries, and I would just pitch to like 50 people at once, and I'd get them on this. They'd each pay 20 euro, and we'd go on this whole adventure. And like I would make money in all kinds of different ways, and I just think, I mean, the entrepreneurial spirit is, in the United States it exists, but there's more opportunity for you to do other things and work for companies and do good and have a career and make a lot of money. In countries that are more like third worldish, it's like the opportunity it's either you're an entrepreneur or you're working for pennies on the dollar, right? You're not really making a lot of money. I've just always had an entrepreneurial tick to me, and I like it. I like the job. I like to communicate with people. I'm good at sales. It's exciting for me. But yeah, there's entrepreneurs and everything in each country, and it's entrepreneurship's not easy, but you have to have a love for it. And I think that's just going out there and just kind of being yourself. But that's in a nutshell, that's like an overview of like what I see. And I've done business in many countries, and like I just, I like to like stick to certain countries to do business, as you know.
Like ideas that are like amazing and working in Italy, and those startup ideas do not exist, say, in the United States, or say a startup idea that's
Vice
working
versa.
in Colombia, and can that be brought into United States?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into like, creating a startup in another country, right? Because like, when we talk about like, okay, I want to start an app or something, let's say 10 years ago in South America. Well, the typical person has a cell phone that doesn't really have that much space. And you know what, they can't download the app. So it becomes like you see these hurdles depending on like the country you're in that, you know, may allow or not allow for something like that to succeed. Also prices, like, you know, you have to price accordingly. Also opportunities. You know, let's say in Colombia, when I was a little kid, like you could call the store, the drugstore at the corner and order, you know, a gallon of milk or a chocolate bar, and they'll just bring it to you. So the idea of like a DoorDash existed, that already existed, or you can call a taxi and they would come and you could do the whole thing. And Uber existed without the technology in between. In the United States, you know, you could call a taxi and do certain things, but it didn't work out. Like it didn't give that, you know, you wouldn't get things delivered so easily from a drugstore or something like that. So a lot of these things kind of existed from like a needs basis. But, you know, I see like, you know, there's a company, Rocket something, who would duplicate ideas that were successful in the United States and implement them in Europe and have incredible success. Now that's a model that, you know, that people follow. I think that's kind of been pushed a little too hard. I don't think it's that easy. Starting a startup's not easy, you know, period. It's not like you can just get a good idea that works in the States and just implement it. There's a lot that goes behind it. But I know companies and people that have effectively done it and made a lot of money through it. Yeah, that's sort of my perspective from, you know, country to country.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinated with, you know, certain things like coffee or tea, or even certain exotic fruits that get exported around the world, and you know, and they get acceptance in different parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Especially coffees, right? You know, coffee is found in Indonesia. You know, they are sold in various countries. Same thing with Colombian coffee, and so I was just wondering, like, you know, what kind of startups are you seeing in Colombia and other places where, you know, they are like making these different items and selling in the rest of the world?
You know, it's crazy because like, you know, in like I see a lot in like in Colombia and like South America, there's a lot of fintech startups because there's a lot of like unbanked. So like you'll see like, you know, fintech startup that offers, you know, banking solutions or cheaper banking solutions. That's what you hear in the news. That's what you see a lot. Now populations are, you know, I think the GDP per capita in South America is relatively high considering, you know, comparatively to the world. There's a lot of opportunity, I believe, in South America. But for some reason, you know, the highlights of what you see in South America is mostly around fintech for for the unbanked, you know, reason. Other than that, you don't really see any sort of like AI based or any sort of like progressive or innovative, really innovative stuff like you see in like the United States or in India or Europe. Like, you know, you see a lot of that. You know, that's something you see in South America, at least from my perspective. And I'm not deep into the startup game in South America either. I'm not like following every trend. Perhaps there are, but not that I hear it a lot.
So how do you keep yourself updated with say what's happening in the startup scene? Do you visit a lot of startup events? What's your general like strategy around that?
I mean, I think now as the world lives online, I think that that's kind of the accessibility point is like on this, you know, like that's where like that's I spend a good couple of hours a day kind of reading and seeing new events that go on. I mean, we hear about this like this new man, right? Company named Maya, you know, in China. That's like, you know, it's like I think they bring together like Claude and a bunch of like different AI tools into one
Yeah.
service. And that's like the latest thing. And so we're seeing all the real innovations that stick out next. It's like, I don't know, how about you? Where do you go?
Yeah, I participate in startup conferences. I get invited as a speaker, but I generally go because, you know, once you get invited as a speaker, then, you know, there's certain amount of privilege that you get. So you end up talking with a lot of people, and people themselves come up to you and talk. They assume that I'm knowledgeable, whereas I'm literally there to seek
Mm.
knowledge. So I end up talking with people, striking conversation over lunch. If it's a dinner event, then, you know, end up talking with three or four people over dinner. Just have like a round table conversation, understand what they are doing, especially, you know, small things like, you know, what are the AI tools that you're using? What is the tool that you're using to recruit some amazing talent? So those kind of conversations would only happen when you are, you know, physically meeting people,
Yeah.
and understanding, you know, what's the most happening startup within the city. Or sometimes there's a lot of gossip as well, like, okay, you know, this startup poached this startup's employees and all that. But it does give like a lot of insights on what's happening within the city and what are the opportunities to tap into. And also
That's exciting.
Sometimes also what I've seen is that you meet people and they'll make you feel good
Yeah.
with uh, saying that, hey, I had good conversation, I was going through some mental challenges, and this kind of conversation helped me. One of the things that I learned at the very beginning when I started doing startups was that I saw people bragging and I was just not able to connect with them. So I always kind of reminded myself that I shouldn't brag. I shouldn't overplay whatever little success if I'm getting, and if I'm not getting the success, then just be like honest, honest about what's really going on. If I'm not finding customers, I want to tell to the people that, hey, I'm not finding customers. I believe I have a great product, but I'm not getting customers. And what happens is having those genuine conversations, even the people who are talking with me, they kind of open up about what's really going on within their company. So both of us, we end up, walking away from that conversation feeling good, or at least understanding what each one is going through. Then, the people who come in and they say, hey, we raised few $1 million and we are like getting 100 customers signed up on a daily basis, whereas so that might just not be true. And I found that many times, like when you start hiring employees and you get people for interviews, and they kind of tell like, hey, you ask them like what's really going on in that startup. It looks like it's doing phenomenally well, and that those employees speak up saying that, hey, that's all vaporware, there's nothing happening, there's no customers getting signed up, that's why I want to quit that company.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, look, the reality is, I mean, life is just good to be honest, right? It's good to have those real conversations with people, or if everybody grows, everybody benefits. Perhaps, one can help the others. And, most people will go around probably driving, right? Even if they're not doing well, like you're saying. So, you'll probably encounter a lot of that. Yeah, yeah, the startup world is
Being truthful actually opens up more opportunities
I think
than
so too.
bragging about something. If I'm facing a challenge with attrition, if I even out, so generally also one other thing that happens is when you're being very honest, there are some people who try to like take pleasure of it.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think with age one can kind of figure out who those people are, and then try to push them away as quickly.
Oh, bro, we don't have time for that nonsense.
Yeah, so I hate the people who cause the drama in life, and who wanna you know have fun at the expense of others.
I think that, I mean, in life, I think just generally speaking, aside from startups, it's like if you should be going around adding value to people. That's what life's about. I mean, little things. I mean, you don't like the goal is not to be like you don't have to be, Steve Jobs or any of these huge people that like have an impact on the world. The littlest things that you can do, if you can stop and help somebody or some kind words, little things in life, you should be adding value everywhere you can. Like
Yeah.
letting go of anything that, is you can't hold grudges. You gotta let go. You gotta talk to people. You have to be honest with yourself, honest with other people, like connect, like care about one another because it's also ultimately what you have, and you share your experience through understanding and conversation and connection, and it's everything else is kind of bullshit because nobody really even cares at the end of the day how much revenue you have or whatever it may be. That's neither here nor there. Sooner or later you're gonna, if you were a good person, you impacted people, even if it was a small amount of people, or if you impacted a big amount of people through something. It's like the idea is that you go around adding value, and if you can live with that philosophy, the amount of value that you can add over time, it will accumulate. Not only that, you will probably have more opportunity to do better in life because your system, the base of your system is based on doing that. And if you're doing that, if you're truly adding more value, it'll come back. It'll come back. So the world, it will come back bigger. So you got to put yourself out there and give more and be more. And you're a great example of that. I think when we first started our startup, like you were you gave, like there was it was just like, hey, like let's open these doors. Like you believed in the idea, and like it's a very special thing. And we talk about people being around the right people in life, and it's in everything because everybody that we're around, and I'm the type of person that I reach out to people. I'll open the door and I'll try and like, see if I can talk to somebody and create a relationship because you never know. In life, you really never know who's on the other side and who's doing that. And I think that when you are around people, you get a sensation and and there's a vibe and that can go into something you don't even understand. And it's a beautiful thing. So I think just if you have a base of adding value in life to other people, I think everything will come together. But you have to be like that. You have to be mature enough, and I pray for that type of wisdom because it takes wisdom to have that sort of approach. You have to be bigger than the bullshit that may just come about, right? Because there's always bullshit around. You gotta navigate through
Make very interesting points, Antonio. And I agree with in regard to the mentors. Like we did just discussed about mentors. One of the things that I personally really look forward to in mentors is people who offer tangible benefit from the conversation.
it.
You meet a lot of people from the industry, people who are very accomplished, but they don't offer tangible help. They always hold back. And and I found that the good mentors are those who don't hold back, who don't put conditions for their help, and they're just very forthcoming in understanding like the challenges, and maybe connecting to an investor, connecting to someone who can help you recruit a candidate, or just referring you a candidate, or
Right.
just giving you a tip without expecting anything in return. And there are like set of those kind of mentors that I've been fortunate to have. And what I have personally tried to do is reciprocate that with any youngster that I meet across, in in just giving back that help. So I personally created like multiple WhatsApp groups where I help the local community within my city and within certain regional things, where I try to connect fellow startup founders and try to figure out synergies between them, and just help them. This is not for any additional cost or anything. It's just how do you give it back to the community.
Yeah, totally. It's just about like what we're talking about, like value. Like you just have to be a value, not only value driven, value. You need to collaborate with whatever you can as well. I mean, little ways and big ways, whatever it is. Just if you, I think if you live on that sort of playing field, you're going to get a lot more, and it'll continue to accumulate and grow when you have that sort of approach. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think this has been a wonderful conversation, Antonio, and I think any last thoughts?
I think we talked about like from top to bottom. I think we touched on a lot of the intricacies and team approach, and just at the end of the day, it's like getting the right people and executing. It sounds like.
Yeah, as simple as that.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I appreciate you, man. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to the next conversation.
It's been a pleasure. This has been a wonderful conversation, Antonio. And looking forward to many more of these podcasts.
Absolutely.